Good evening, brothers and sisters. Buenas tardes, hermanos y hermanas. Un gusto verlos nuevamente. Glad to see you back again for our final. It's the third one and final session of this brief Salt and Light program. I'm glad that you persevere during these 3 sessions. Gracias a Dios que llegamos a la tercera sesión y son bienvenidos, bienvenidas. Mi nombre es José Luis Elías, soy director de la Oficina de Educación y Formación del Departamento Vida, Dignidad y Justicia de la Diócesis de San Bernardino y les doy la bienvenida a la tercera y última sesión del programa del año 2021 de Sal y Luz. My name is José Luis Elias. I'm the director of the Office of Education and Formation in the Department of Life, Dignity, and Justice of the Diocese of San Bernardino. And I welcome you to this third and final session of this brief course of Salt and Light program. Through this program, the diocese wants to introduce participants to the beauty of the social teachings of the Church, so we all can understand the social mission of the baptized, the social mission of the Church, the social mission of the parish. And for this program, we use basically as a textbook the official document of the U.S. Bishops, Communities of Salt and Light, Reflections on the Social Mission of the Parish. And as I will explain later, we will conclude also with a brief short project that will give us the opportunity to receive our diocesan certificate of the Salt and Light program. Los obispos nos han invitado a reflexionar sobre la misión social de la parroquia y esto es lo que quiere la diócesis, que todos los bautizados, todos los católicos conozcamos la misión social de la iglesia. Y por eso es que usamos como si fuera libro de texto el librito Comunidades de Sal y Luz, reflexiones sobre la misión social de la parroquia. Espero que los que están en el programa en español ya hayan recibido en el correo una copia de este documento. The document is available online, Communities of Salt and Light, but we also sent an email asking if you was interested in a hard copy. We are glad to send it to you. Very good. Thank you for your participation in the prayer. Gracias. Seguimos adelante. Pues aquí para el tema de hoy. Quiero recordar que es la tercera sesión y que en la primera sesión se nos habló del reino de los cielos y cómo Jesús tenía ese proyecto de hacer realidad el reino de los cielos, y el reino de los cielos lo enseñó con su vida, como lo vimos en el Evangelio de hoy, diciéndonos que Él vino a traer buenas noticias y a inaugurar un año de gracia. Y también nos lo enseñó con las parábolas, esas analogías donde con las historias pudo ganar la memoria y la atención de los oyentes para aprender en lo más profundo lo que es el reino de los cielos. Un reino que implica una conversión y que implica que nosotros tengamos una apertura a este nuevo proyecto de amor y misericordia. Eso fue lo que vimos en la sesión 1. In session 1, we learned about the kingdom of God and how Deacon John told us that Jesus was the kingdom and that he came with this project to make reality in our world the kingdom of God. And he used parables, he used sayings to gain people's attention, to get the disciples closer to him and to his project. And we learn how this project of the reign of God, it has social implications, economical implications, spiritual implications, because the kingdom of God is here to transform the whole reality of human beings, but particularly of those who accept the invitation to a continuing conversion and to born again, and to receive his invitation to collaborate in the inauguration of his kingdom, with creating new relationships, creating the new family of God, where we practice justice, mercy, compassion, and service to one another. And that was session 1. Then we continue with session 2, where Tom Dolan introduced us to the church and how the church continues the project of Jesus, the reign of God. Tom told us that the church developed what is called the Catholic social teaching. And using the Catholic social teaching, the church responds to challenges of today's society. So today's society is challenged and is open also, and invited to be open to the message of the reign of God, to embrace the values of the gospel, to embrace the calling to justice, mercy, compassion, service. The church has this best kept secret that is called the Catholic social teaching, and is calling throughout the centuries to human beings, so all are open to the project of Jesus and transform this world in a place where the kingdom of God can take place. That was session 2. And we were illuminating with some passages from the scriptures, for example, from the Gospel of Matthew and Luke, particularly when he talked about the Beatitudes and the importance to be instruments of justice and peace. He showed to us three contemporary examples of people who respond to this invitation. Archbishop Romero from El Salvador, and Blessed Dorothy Day from the US, and Dr. Martin Luther King from the US too. 3 examples of people who were open to the project of Jesus. Y esa fue la segunda sesión donde Tom Dolan nos introdujo hacia la iglesia y la misión que tiene de continuar el proyecto de Jesús, y que lo hace a través de la doctrina social de la iglesia. Y a través de la doctrina social de la iglesia se llama a toda la humanidad a abrirse al proyecto de Jesús. Y nos enseñó 3 ejemplos de personas que se han abierto y que han cambiado la sociedad, que han cambiado el mundo que les tocó vivir, con su testimonio de entrega y servicio, de Monseñor Romero, de la sierva de Dios Dorothy Day y del doctor Martin Luther King, que con su apertura al Evangelio hicieron realidad el reino de Dios en los contextos sociales en que les tocó vivir. So then we are ready to participate in this 3rd session and to make the conduction, to continue the thread, because in this session we learn about how our parishes realize the project of Jesus, how answering to the invitation of Jesus to be light of the world and salt of the earth. So tonight we are going to learn what we can do. How can we get organized to make of our parishes communities of salt and light? Esta noche vamos a aprender entonces cómo nuestras parroquias continúan el proyecto de Jesús, el proyecto de la iglesia, esforzándose por vivir la invitación de Jesús cuando dijo: ustedes son la luz del mundo, ustedes son la sal de la tierra. Y hoy aprenderemos cómo a través de la organización comunitaria podemos aprender a hacer de nuestras parroquias comunidades de sal y luz. And the guest instructor for tonight is Rebecca Gifford. She is an oblate of St. Andrew's Abbey. An oblate means a person who participates in this beautiful spirituality of the order of St. Benedict. And of course, by having strict guidance in their spiritual journey through the monks that are present here in the monastery at Palermo, California. She has over 30 years of experience working with diverse parishes and congregations that are eager to develop compassionate power to stand with the most vulnerable. Currently, Rebecca serves as lead organizer of the Inland Communities Organizing Network, ICON, now active within the West End Vicariate of the Diocese of San Bernardino. Rebecca completed her formal studies in theology and ministry at St. Bernard's Institute in Rochester, New York, and in the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. She got her doctoral degree in ministry. So, nuestro instructor invitado de esta noche es Rebecca Gifford. Ella es una oblata del monasterio benedictino que está en Palermo, California. Una oblata, es decir, que participa estrictamente de la espiritualidad benedictina y es guiada por uno de los monjes o la comunidad monacal para avanzar en la vida espiritual, en la vida cristiana. Ella tiene más de 30 años de experiencia trabajando con muchas parroquias y congregaciones que tienen el deseo de desarrollar un poder compasivo para luchar en favor de los más vulnerables. Actualmente, Rebecca sirve como la coordinadora o líder que organiza en esta organización que se llama algo así como Comunidades del Inland, unidas en esta red, Inland Communities Organizing Network, que están activos sobre todo ahorita en el Vicariato del Oeste de la Diócesis de San Bernardino. Rebecca completó sus estudios formales en Teología y Ministerio en el Instituto San Bernardo de Nueva York y en la Universidad Católica de América de Washington, donde ella recibió su doctorado en ministerio. So we welcome Rebecca Gifford to our workshop this evening y le damos la bienvenida with a warm applause, but in silence. And now I stop sharing. So Rebecca, welcome. You are now welcome to lead and to share your experience.
Ay, muchísimas gracias, José Luis. Es un gran placer estar aquí con ustedes. So thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here with all of you. También yo estuve en las sesiones 1 y 2, más para entender mejor, ¿no?, lo que ustedes están haciendo y también conocer un poco a ustedes por sus comentarios y por sus muy buenas preguntas y comentarios durante de las sesiones anteriores. So I also really appreciated the chance to be in the first 2 sessions as a quiet listener, both to get to know what you are learning and also to get to know you a little bit and some of the very good questions and comments that you shared over the course of those first 2 sessions. And I can actually relate to some of the comments and questions that you raised related to charity versus justice. También yo tenía hace muchos años las mismas preguntas y confusiones sobre la diferencia entre la caridad y la justicia. Y yo me criaba in New Hampshire. I grew up in New Hampshire. For those of you who might know, that's a campo. That is a very rural area. And where I learned from my mother and from many others in our little community how to quietly make sure that those who were very, very poor had enough to eat and had enough warm clothes in the wintertime. Yo aprendí desde mi mamá y otras personas muy activas en la comunidad donde me criaba, cómo servir a los más vulnerables, los más pobres, que faltaban comida suficiente para comer y también faltaba ropa suficiente en tiempo de invierno, donde había mucho frío, por 6 meses al año. And I later came to a big city, what for me was a big city, which is Rochester, New York, where you see I eventually had some of my theological studies. But before I discovered and had the desire to study theology, I lived in a very, very poor section of that city in Rochester, New York, where there were more abandoned houses, as in people not living. It's hard to believe we don't have abandoned houses in our area. We have houses that are sobrepoblados, right? That have too many people in them, 3 and 4 families trying to live under a roof in one house. But in Rochester, there was a lot of poverty. And my first inclination was to do what I had learned from my mother and from others in my little town in New Hampshire, which is when people came to the door of the parish where I was, we answered it and we tried to respond with food and we tried to listen and we tried to understand what else was going on. And many times people would say, but I don't have a place to stay for the night and it's cold. And entonces yo trataba de entender cuando llegaba a una parroquia en Rochester, New York, es cómo dar respuesta, ¿no?, a la gente que tocaba la puerta. Todos los días, todas las noches, en una parroquia allá. Y por lo que había aprendido de mi mamá y otras personas, ok, hay que organizar comida, mucha comida. Hay que buscar ropa, porque hay mucho frío en Rochester también. Y hay que ver cómo buscar un lugar, ¿no?, donde hay cama. And very interesting, in Rochester, New York at that time, there was a very active Catholic worker house. Había una casa de obrero católico muy activo. And for those of you who know anything about Dorothy Day, the person, one of the people that Tom Dolan mentioned last week, she and others were responsible for beginning the whole Catholic worker movement. And I had no idea at that time. I arrived just after she had died, but people were talking about her. Yo llegué a Rochester y a conocer este casa de obrero católico en los años después del año en que Dorothy Doe falleció. Okay? Pero había mucha gente hablando sobre este Dorothy Day y su manera de trabajar y la importancia de no simplemente dar algo a una persona pobre, pero conocer, escuchar para entender el voz de Jesús por esta misma gente sufriendo. So it was really through people that I met at the Catholic Worker House in Rochester, New York, that they told me about this Dorothy Day, that you would not just give somebody a cup and tell them to go away, you would try to spend time with them. You would try to see in them the face of Jesus. You would try to see that there are angels, right, that arrive when you least expect them, and people who are suffering and vulnerable are going to be many times those very angels that so many of us miss. Yeah. So I was very familiar with the work of charity. Entonces, por toda esta experiencia, desde mi niñez, yo tenía mucho conocimiento de las obras, de cómo llevar a cabo las obras de caridad. No tenía ni una idea cómo llevar a cabo estas obras de justicia. Y de vez en cuando había gente diciendo, oh, hay protesta o hay vigilia, o cuando ya en tiempo de la guerra en El Salvador, ¿no? En el tiempo de Monseñor Romero, había mucha preocupación en la comunidad, en Rochester, por estar en solidaridad, igual que los obispos dicen en esta obra de Sal y Luz, ¿no? Hay que estar en solidaridad, no solamente con gente en nuestro propio barrio y vecindad, pero también sobre todo el mundo. So it was really at that time where I had no idea what really it meant to do the work of justice. I had been well formed by wonderful people in my life on how to do charity. But it was really then that same period that I learned through people that were escaping the war in El Salvador and were coming all the way to Rochester at that time. I learned how to begin thinking about what it would mean to step into the works of justice. So I could very much appreciate all the questions that have come up over these last two sessions over how in the world do we think about doing the work of justice. So I thought today we might start, and I'm going to share my screen, by looking at that question in a little more detail. And the bishops, actually, the very same bishops that wrote the document of Salt and Light, have also have teaching on what they call the 2 feet of love and action. Entonces, la misma conferencia de los obispos, la conferencia episcopal, que ya escribió este documento de comunidades de Sal y Luz, también tiene otra enseñanza sobre el amor en acción, y los 2 pies de amor en acción. And we're going to send you this document if you haven't seen it after tonight, but I will give you a brief look in Spanish and a brief look in English, okay? So really the 2 feet, we think about ourselves walking with 2 feet, of social justice and charity are both needed in order to walk well, right? And the charity is really to respond to the basic needs that people have, those that come to the door, you know, to help people right away, not wait, give them what they need. But that justice is beginning to look at what is behind the reason people are coming to the door. Why are there so many people? And could we begin to not only understand those reasons, but eliminate some of the reasons that people must depend on coming to our doors for food, coming for clothing, coming for housing, coming for healthcare. And so los 2 pies son para ver, ¿no? Si podríamos no solamente dar y lo que se necesita la gente en el momento, las necesidades más urgentes, pero tratar de entender cómo eliminar, ¿no? estas causas de sufrimiento. So maybe to illustrate these 2 feet, I was thinking there's really a contemporary example we might use, right? Which is, at least in the communities where I'm working in the West End and also in the Pomona Valley, I'm hearing about people who are having trouble paying their rent. La gente en dificultad para pagar la renta. Y cuando pensamos en esta realidad, y quizás ustedes conocen a gente, ¿no?, en dificultad para pagar la renta. Y yo sé que en varias parroquias ha tratado de organizar una respuesta de caridad. ¿O por qué no vive con nosotros? You know, in some parishes that I've heard stories, quiet stories in the prayer groups, right? In the marriage groups, in some of the other fellowships. Well, you know, if you're having trouble, why don't you come stay with us for a while? I've heard people saying, you know, Rebecca, actually, there are 2 or 3 families that are living in the houses in our community. And each family has a bedroom. So that's one way to respond, right? Another is to lend money. Many people have said in parishes where I'm working right now, well, you know, we don't really need rental assistance for back rent. No tenemos renta atrasada porque ya había pedido préstamo para pagarlo. Aunque uno no tiene dinero suficiente para otras necesidades básicas, ¿no? Y ya hay mucha deuda a sus familiares y hay otros miembros, ¿no?, de la comunidad. Con corazón de caridad ha dicho, okay, we'll lend you this money to help out. Or I can think of a prayer group where, with much discretion, you know, un foro muy discreto, they organizaba una colecta. Ay, este señor siempre, no, necesita esta ayuda. Su esposa ya tiene cáncer, ya tiene 2 hijos chiquitos. El señor no puede trabajar porque está cuidando de su esposa. Entonces ya vamos a ver cómo podríamos, ¿no?, organizar una colecta entre nosotros para dar a él la ayuda financiera para su renta. So really thinking, in one particular prayer group I'm thinking of, who said, we know this gentleman's wife is dying of cancer. They have 2 young children. He's home taking care of her. He's not able to work. He's afraid he's going to lose his house because he doesn't have the money for the rent. We'll take up a collection. So I think many of you would be familiar, right, with those kinds of responses. But what would be a justice response? ¿Cuáles serían las respuestas de la justicia? Respuestas a los en dificultad para pagar la renta. And to answer that, we could come up with ideas now, but before we do, and we're actually going to have a chance in small groups in a few minutes, I'd like to share with you a parable, not a biblical parable, a folk parable, ¿no? Otra parábola, pero del pueblo, ¿no? Quizás de un pueblo en África o no sé dónde, pero es una parábola. And actually, I want to thank Edgar Velasco, who's actually in this class, for helping to put these slides together, because we've used them in his parish. And I'm going to share them with you, and I'm going to tell the story in English because the slides all have captions in Spanish. Entonces, voy a explicar, ¿no?, la parábola en inglés porque en cada diapositiva ya está explicado con mucha claridad, gracias a Edgar, in español. Okay? So here's the story that some of you may know. So let's think about and analyze the root causes of the problems that we experience. Pensamos y analizamos la raíz del problema que tenemos. So here's the parábola. Here's the parable. You're at the edge of a river. You're out in your very rural area, and all of a sudden, a small child is drowning in the river. And without even thinking, of course, you jump in the river and you pull out the little child. But before you can even get your energy back, you see another child that's drowning. So you take that person out, you get them onto the shore. And before you can get your energy back and catch your breath, there's another one, another child who's drowning. So you jump in and pull them out. Oh. But then another, and another, and another. So while, and there was a whole village that's helping these children get out of the water. Había un grupo de rescatadores, ¿no? 24 horas, ¿no? De vigilancia, cada quien con su turno, ayudando a vigilar el río para sacar la gente del río, los niños del río. So they actually had organized a 24-hour patrol to make sure that there was somebody watching that river all the time to figure out what to take them to rescue them. But then people said, who keeps throwing these kids in the river? Was their idea, right? Their assumption. Somebody must be throwing these kids in the river. ¿Quién sigue tirando a estos niños en el río? Era lo que pensaba, ¿no? Pero ellos van río arriba para descubrir qué está pasando. They went upstream to find out what was going on. And this is what they discovered. There was a bridge that needed repairing. So here were the kids used to crossing, and instead of making it all the way across the bridge, they fell into the river and they were in danger of drowning. So we often talk about that as we're trying to do the work of justice in our parishes and communities, as doing an upstream analysis, un análisis de río arriba, ¿no? en nuestras propias comunidades y parroquias. So this kind of analysis allows us to ask, why is it broken? Really? Who is responsible? And what action is needed? So this parabola did not say what happened after they discovered that the bridge was out, but we could imagine and hope, right? They then tried to figure out how to either rebuild the bridge, go to the proper authorities, figure out why that bridge was so neglected. So now we'd like to go back to this question about trouble paying rent. Regresamos a la pregunta sobre dificultad para pagar la renta. Okay, Jose Luis, is that better? Speak up, Jose Luis, because I'm not going to be looking at my phone. Okay.
Very good. It's very good.
All right, that's better. Good. So we're going to say, if you look at, whoops, sorry. Okay. You look at what do you see in your own context? Que miras en tu propio contexto, familia, parroquia, comunidad, trabajo. ¿Por qué las familias tienen dificultades para pagar renta? Why are families having trouble paying for rent? And we're going to take a few minutes in small groups, maybe about 5 minutes, very brief, just to share your ideas and your observations about why families are having trouble paying for rent. Sus, okay? Preguntas? ¿Ya claro? Okay. José Luis, So we just have time for maybe just a couple of examples. Anybody have from your conversation some good examples of going upstream? Why are people having difficulty paying their rent? Briefly.
Both.
Yes, Claudio? Yeah.
Okay. Bueno, lo que hablamos fueron casi las mismas opiniones y estamos hablando del sustento económico, el miedo, pues la enfermedad COVID, ¿verdad? Y aparte surgieron otras enfermedades también. Yo ahorita en serio, sí me asusta todavía y la gente dice, no, ya ahorita vamos a vivir con este COVID, todo está bien y bla, bla, bla. Pero a mí me pone a pensar cuando yo voy a un doctor, es con mascarilla y el doctor me dice, cuídate.
Ok, ahora estamos enfocando, ¿no? En esta cuestión de renta. Entonces,
la renta.
ya está diciendo, sí, si la gente con dificultad, entonces, a ver si Keith. Okay.
Pues porque muchos perdieron su empleo.
Okay.
Por la cuestión del virus que tenemos ahorita en la actualidad.
Okay.
Perdieron su empleo, tienen miedo a salir a la calle.
Okay, so again, we're zeroing in, right? When we go upstream, we aren't walking all over the countryside to find out why kids are drowning. They went up the stream to look at the bridge. And this is where you know now, okay, some people can't pay their rent because they've had COVID and they continue to get sick and they also have lost their job. Okay, Keith, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. What we discussed was cost of living is too high, for one thing, and that, rent, just rent is high, if for, a single bedroom, 2-bedroom is just phenomenal now.
That's right.
And, the whole work situation, a lot of people aren't able to go back to work. The government can only, in a sense, do so much. I think they've done quite a bit. Yes, we would like them to do more, but someone has to pay for it, and I think all us taxpayers are all trying to pay for it. So
okay, so let's stay with the reasons. Okay, we're zeroing in on an analysis here. So you have some great things you just said. One is the cost of living is going up, right? And income is going down. Right? El costo de vivir está subiendo y el ingreso está bajando por falta de empleo. That kind of give us some ideas? Okay, let's go to Paul. Paul, you're on mute, Paul.
There's a lack of affordable housing in our state. And that problem has been exacerbated over the years and more recently with the run up in the cost of housing. Also there's been, I think that there's an issue that's not talked about too much about employers exploiting immigrant workers who don't have documentation, knowing that they can't complain, they can't, seek justice, or because if they do, then they may just lose their job, or the migra is called on them.
Okay, so ya con esta situación de empleo, especialmente para los inmigrantes, que está ganando muy poco y en condiciones muy difíciles, pero también que hay este punto que en el estado de California hay falta de vivienda. No hay casas suficientes para todo. Y el costo está subiendo. There's actually a new report that came out for San Bernardino County that the cost of housing has gone up 22% in just a few months. It's the fastest rising top 3 of any place in the country. Okay, Joe and Mercy.
Joe and Mercy. And then
there's a couple
Hector.
of things I wanted to share. The first one is that there's not enough childcare for both parents to go to work. That was one of them. We're actually experiencing this in Big Bear right now. What happened during the pandemic is everybody wanted to go to Big Bear. So everyone from LA decided to buy every single house in Big Bear up so they can Airbnb it. So there's not enough homes for these people to live in. And the people who are renting, the people sold the house from under them. So there's not any homes for them to live in. So to find a laborer or a worker up here is not going to happen. It's tough because there's not enough homes. So the city got together and they're coming. It's really ingenious the ways they're coming up with, but you know, some of the things they're doing is amazing, but we'll get to that, I'm sure, later on.
We will. Let's just stay with the analysis.
So we're going to stay with the analogy that, you know, these Airbnbs bought up all these homes. And if you didn't own your home, there's no way that you would ever be able to afford the rent that's going on right now, because they're getting $500 a night for Airbnb, where they could rent it to somebody for $1,500 a month. So what do you think people are going to do?
Sí. Okay. Es por decir, en lugares como, do you speak Spanish? Do you want to just give a brief summary?
Sure. So lo que pasó acá arriba en Big Bear es cuando llegó el COVID, todos querían venir a Big Bear de vacaciones. Y cuando pasó eso, todos los de Los Ángeles y de allá abajo compraron todas las casas para hacer el Airbnb. Y cuando hicieron el Airbnb, todas las casas que estaban rentando a la gente que trabajaban, las vendieron de abajo de ellos y ya no tenían dónde quedarse, dónde dormir. Y lo que estaban haciendo, estaban agarrando $500 la noche para el Airbnb, cuando la gente que estaba rentando no estaba pagando $1,500 por el mes. So, ustedes saben que el dinero va a mandar en eso ahorita. Y mucha gente se pusieron disponible y no tenían dónde ir ni dormir.
Okay. One more, and we're going to move on because we are behind in time. Wendy.
Estaba Héctor primero, pero puede ser Wendy y luego brevemente Héctor.
Ok, voy a decirlo rápido. Yo nomás yo pienso que es también que no tienen suficientes recursos para ayudar a la gente, como decirles cómo se pueden buscar la ayuda para pagar la renta. Muchas personas no están informados sobre los recursos que hay.
Okay.
So I just said that it was just the resources that I don't think that many people are informed about resources or know how to go about to get resources for rent as well.
Okay, so we find, and we'll get to this in a minute, that as we start thinking about responses, right, they can both be direct, basic need responses. Let's find them the money, but they could also be other more complicated structural kinds of challenges that need to be addressed. Entonces, ya podemos por estas clases de análisis visualizar, ¿no? Que para dar respuesta, dar remedio a esta clase de sufrimiento, hay que pensar en el pie de caridad y pie de justicia. Es por decir que hay que siempre pensar en estas situaciones cómo caminar con los dos pies. Okay, so that's what makes, I think, this idea of 2 feet of love and action so important, is that we need both to move forward, to actually find a way to address the suffering of people in this kind of a situation. Okay.
Héctor, ¿quieres decir algo bien breve?
Sí, rapidito. Para nosotros hispanos no tenemos el hábito de guardar. La verdad, lo que ganamos lo echamos y ya estamos esperando la siguiente quincena porque así somos. Es muy difícil que un hispano se gaste la mitad y guarde la mitad para tiempos difíciles. Y es lo que nos está pasando, que estamos esperando el cheque y si ganas más, ya te echaste otro compromiso más grande. No necesitamos una troca del año y vamos y sacamos otra porque ya gané 1,500 más y nos estamos echando compromiso tras compromiso. Y cuando viene el problema que no hay trabajo, entonces cuando se rompe todo. Entonces el hábito de la administración para nosotros es bien necesario.
Okay, so in resumen, about money management, right? And the need to also think about how is it that we save or that we think about managing our money in a way that we can deal with some of these crises. And I think these are all really good examples. If we were all together right now in a real space, we would have big paper on the wall and on tables, and we'd be drawing all of this. We'd be going upstream. And I'll tell you, I have been in many of these workshops where we have come up with a massive analysis of asking, because when you say, why is it that someone doesn't save money? Well, because, right? Or why is it someone can't find a place to rent? Well, because a lot of people are moving to our community and buying up the property. Well, why are they doing that? Right? You just keep asking why, but that's for another day. So this idea of this whole 3 sessions is to give you an experience of what it can be possible in terms of beginning to activate communities of salt and light. But there's hopefully a lot more opportunity to learn together. Entonces la idea, ¿no? Con este curso, breve curso, es para decir, es como el sabor, ¿no? De algo mucho más extensivo. Ya vamos a pensar después de este curso en otra clase de preparación y formación para que podamos seguir aprendiendo, porque es algo muy complicado. Ok, muy bien. Entonces, para complicar la situación más, cuando pensamos, ¿no? en estas dificultades, no es simplemente pensar en una cuestión de renta o ayuda, pero ya nos toca a pensar en cómo restaurar sistemas como Dios los diseñó. Esos mismos sistemas que dependen para una vida, ¿no? De plenitud. So as we begin doing this analysis, we're not just thinking about the immediate systems in the particular situations in our area, but we realize we're a part of several systems that we need in order to thrive as human beings, right? We need an economic system that works for us. We need, and we say, well, and God actually, has a design for these systems for us. Design for the economic system is that we would be good stewards of our shared wealth, que ser buenos administradores de la riqueza compartida, ¿no? That para el diseño de Dios para sistemas sociales son para fomentar las relaciones humanizadoras. So they ought to be places where we're growing. Our kids are growing. Our grandparents are growing. Everybody's growing, right? Because of these connections. We certainly are very familiar as active Catholics with how important the religious systems are. Our goal is to bring people closer to God. We had that beautiful prayer at the beginning about the ecological systems. That's our common home. We got to be sustaining our common home, keeping the garden, ¿no? Hay que sostener a nuestra casa común. Y sistemas políticos, esos son, cuando ya funcionan para el bienestar de todos, son sistemas que mantengan un orden justo. Un orden justo. So, ¿qué es nuestra parte, no? De participar y entender cómo participar, ¿no? En la restauración de esos sistemas ya imprescindibles para la vida. So we're in our thinking about justice, we were just drawn to understanding that, wow, we can have a part not only in fixing the problem with rent in Big Bear, but we together are participating in really making these systems as God intended them. If they've been turned upside down, we try to put them right side up, como deber hacer. Okay, so just to give us the picture, right, of what we're stepping into when we start using both feet instead of just the charity foot. Es para darnos una idea de qué clase de vocación tenemos, ¿no? Cuando entramos no solamente en el camino con un solo pie de caridad, como un pogo stick, ¿no? Pero un camino con 2 pies. Y cuando pensamos en cuestiones de justicia también. So, pensamos en, okay, hay mucho para hacer. Hay que pensar en qué hacer. So we keep thinking there's a lot to do. We've got to analyze. We've got to try and figure out what in the world we can begin to do to fix this. But some of you may be familiar with actually a fairly well-known management consultant that had a saying, first who, then what. Primero quién y luego qué. And we're kind of used to, come on, it's time, let's go, let's feed, let's find the shelter, let's, and what's going to be important, and we'll look at this after our break, is really focusing on how do we activate. So when you say, who is responsible for carrying out the works of charity and justice, who would you say? Who would you say? I'm going to call back on Joe. Joe, who's responsible for doing this charity and justice?
Would you say all of us?
Everyone in the community, all of it.
All right.
Everybody plays a role just the way we do in our parishes. Even this altar server has a role in the parish,
Yeah.
The young children do, all of us.
Yeah. But how often, right? How often people say, vamos a esperar hasta que fulano, busca la solución, right? Fulano hay que cambiar, fulano hay que hacer X otra cosa. So often we kind of point fingers, well, the pastor ought to change this, or the mayor, or the governor, or my boss, or the school principal, or somebody ought to do something, right? But not us. And I think you're here because you already understand this isn't about only looking out there. It's saying, how is it that we activate? So when we look at who's responsible, it's todos los bautizados, right? Toda la gente bautizada. And we're not going to have time to really look at this in depth tonight, but there's another wonderful paper that we will send to you from the bishops, from the same bishops conference, that talks about the mission of all the baptized. To be in it, right? To be in trying to figure out how to walk with both feet. And one of the gospel passages they use in their document, which we'll send to you, is the very one that you prayed with tonight at the beginning of this meeting, right? It's the Spirit of God is upon each one of us, right? Has anointed each one of us to release captives. Entonces es para decir que en estas mismas conferencias de obispo ya hay un documento que vamos a compartir con ustedes sobre la misión de todos los bautizados. Como parte de este documento ya enfoque en el mismo evangelio que usamos hoy en nuestra oración de apertura, diciendo que el Espíritu de Dios está sobre mí y sobre usted y sobre cada persona, ¿no? Y entonces cuando pensamos en nosotros como los agentes de Sal y Luz, los promotores, los animadores de comunidades de Sal y Luz, ya es muy importante, ¿no? Ubicarnos en esta visión que, no es simplemente otra persona, es una oportunidad para cada miembro de la comunidad. Okay, so I think it's time, Jose Luis, right? To take a brief break?
Sí.
Okay, so we're going to come back and we're going to hit the ground running on how is it we actually activate communities of salt and light. How do we start putting the pieces together? Just like some of you are probably very expert in building houses and doing other kinds of very, very elaborate kinds of projects, well, there's got to be a plan and there's got to be a strategy, ¿verdad? Entonces, ya ustedes acostumbrados quizás en otras clases de proyecto, por ejemplo, de construcción o no sé qué, ya que no puede dar inicio a construir una casa sin plan, sin cuadro angular, piedra angular, ni nada, okay? Entonces, so when we come back, we're gonna start looking at what's the piedra angular, what's the cornerstone that has to be present in order to begin really activating communities that aren't going to fall apart as soon as you put them back together. So welcome back, everybody. Ya seguimos, ¿no? And how is it that we can go about activating our communities? And so what a number of us have done is put together a little overview of some of the steps that we have found helpful. Okay, so this is from the ground, from experience. Okay, and what we're going to do is send these whole pages to you. Okay, this in Spanish and the other one in English, just to give you an idea. Sorry, let me just move this. Okay, where you will have the whole framework, where we start by talking how important it is to focus on talent and recruiting an organizing team. And then we look at the whole process that you may be familiar with of see, judge, act, ver, juzgar, actuar, but with a lot more detail, right, than maybe what you have been accustomed to. So this page will be something that we send to all of you, but we're going to go through it step by step tonight, okay, to give you an idea of what to expect. That sound okay?
Sí.
So, vamos a mandar una página completa a cada quien en inglés y en español que habla sobre la super importancia, sumo importante, de reclutar gente en su equipo. Y también vamos a hablar un poquito sobre cómo utilizar este proceso de ver, juzgar, actuar para activar una comunidad de sal y luz. ¿Okay? Entonces, porque es muy difícil ver una página completa en una sola idioma, ahora vamos a dar comienzo con el punto más clave. Si uno quiere activar comunidad de sal y luz, hay que establecer y dar lo necesario a equipos o organizadores de toda la parroquia. So this is a step that is often overlooked. And when you think about building the capacity for the long haul, right? When you started doing your analysis around justice and going upstream, you could see very quickly that if we're going to have any capacity to look seriously at employment, at worker conditions, at building more housing, at figuring out how to find the resources that people need, we are going to need to build a strategy for the long haul, both within our parish and ideally between parishes and with other groups and maybe other churches, other faith groups in your local communities. And that is something that I certainly now have felt called to, which is why I am the organizer now with what we call a broad-based organizing network, which is referred to by the bishops when they talk about creating community, and they told some of the stories of what happened in a place like Phoenix when churches get together as a part of an ongoing organizing effort. Entonces, mi gran anhelo, ¿no? en mi vida, mi misión personal, cuando hablamos la semana pasada sobre nuestra misión personal, ¿no? Para misión social. Y es para mí ver cómo construir, ¿no? Una organización entre varias parroquias y otros grupos de fe y quizás otros grupos en la comunidad que quiere ver para de largo plazo cómo solucionar, ¿no? Algunos de estos, o restaurar, digo, algunos de estos sistemas económicos para nuestra gente en nuestras comunidades, de trabajo, de casas, de otras cosas. But without the organizing team, we have nothing. So again, as the bishops have said, social ministry is not a committee. It's not just a group over here that does its work once in a while, but it requires leadership. So that's where we talk about you, you and people like you who could become part of an organizing team. And we'll talk the next slide what that team does. And to realize that in each of your parishes, you have a cosecha, right? You've got a good harvest of other people who have been through the ministry formation program, people who may already be active on your parish commissions if you have that structure going in your parish, people connected to all kinds of different ministries, working with parishes now that have 50, 60, 70 different ministries, right? Wow, think about the networks and the connections, right, of the baptized. Entonces ya cuando pensamos en cómo establecer, ¿no?, equipos organizadores en cada parroquia, pensamos no solamente en un comité, pensamos en un equipo de animadores que ya llegan a la cosecha grande que hay en la parroquia, quizás por los que han pasado por MFP, por los activos en las comisiones parroquiales, los activos en otros ministerios parroquiales, sea ministerios litúrgicos, ministros de Eucaristía, proclamadores de la palabra, porque todas esas personas tienen la misma misión bautizada, ¿no? de llevar a cabo estas obras de caridad y la justicia, y por eso ya puede pensar, ¿no?, en cómo envolver a ellos también. ¿Ok? Y primero, ya pensamos, ¿no?, en algunos de los pasos. Ver es ver claro. Eso es ya ver claro la realidad de nuestra gente. Ya leemos, ¿no?, en Éxodo que Moisés ya escuchó a Dios diciendo: Moisés, ya escuché el sufrimiento y los gritos del pueblo, right? So we know in Exodus, you know, what happened when God said to Moses, I have heard the suffering of the people. Right? You've spoken up and I've heard. Well, now God wants us to be those people that listen. And some of that are people that we listen to, just run into, right? But we can also begin to organize what we call listening campaigns. Some of you may be familiar with that. Ya cuando pensamos, ¿no?, en la importancia de ver y ver claro, es por escuchar cuidadosamente a los sufrimientos y esperanzas de nuestra gente. Y ya puede ser en forma informal, pero también en otra forma muy organizado. Ya hemos organizado en varias parroquias campañas de escucha. Y este equipo organizador piensa en todos los grupos. Y estoy pensando en una parroquia en Fontana, donde había un equipo organizador formado y luego diciendo: ok, vamos a los padres de catecismo, porque hay un montón de familias en el programa era antes de pandemia, un montón de familias en este programa de catecismo, a ver qué es la situación de ellos. Vienen a la preparación para la primera comunión, sí, pero en sus vidas, con sus niños, en sus casas, you know, cómo va, ¿no?, la vida. And entonces, so the idea then of putting together a listening campaign, and I'm using the example of a parish before the pandemic, this is a story, where the organizing team said, we're going to go, first of all, to all the catechism families, because we have a monstrous program. And there are lots of people that come for the parent formation and First Communion. And we are going to work out a deal where part of being a part of a Eucharistic community and part of being a part of the body of Christ is to know when one part of the body suffers. We know that from Corinthians, yeah? One part of the body suffers, it all suffers. So part of what lo que podemos hacer es pensar en nuestra parroquia como cuerpo de Cristo, porque en San Pablo, en su carta a los Corintios, habla, ¿no?, sobre la importancia de conocer el cuerpo. No simplemente un pie o un dedo o lo que sea, ¿verdad? No, hay que reconocer todas las partes del cuerpo y también hay que reconocer el sufrimiento y el duelo. de los partes del cuerpo que está sufriendo. So this begins, and when you can begin to put together this kind of a listening, and there's a real art to it, right? We have agendas, we have a training, we learn how to suspend judgment, we learn how to look for talent. Because as we were having this major listening campaign with catechism families, and then once we listened there, we went to this big prayer group, and then we went to the second big prayer group, then we went to the jóvenes adultos, right? Because we wanted to find out, the parish wanted to say, what's happening in our body, right? What parts of the body are hurting? And sometimes we had to be very discreet, ¿no? Para llegar a saber, ¿no? El sufrimiento de la gente. No es simplemente cuestión de ir con una encuesta. ¿Qué necesita? Nada. Estoy bien. Right? So we know if you're really going to sit with people who are suffering that and listen, we have to be discreet, and we have to practice how to enter these conversations without embarrassing people, sin dar vergüenza a nadie, ¿no? Y para llegar a conocer uno a otro la realidad del pueblo. And in the process of that, we're listening. Who are the people who are ready now to take up the reins? Siempre en este proceso de dar escuchas, estamos muy pendientes. ¿Quiénes son los que están ya listos para tomar la rienda? Ya listos. Because the big mistake in doing social ministry is we think, oh, those poor people, they're going to need our help. And there are more people that really need our help. But we are not seeing people as gifted, as talented, no matter how much someone is suffering, no matter how impoverished. They're all human beings, and that's the point of recognizing the baptized, right? And the gift of the baptized, who have gifts and talents, and maybe have never had anyone recognize and invite them to take action. So es por decir que muchas veces tenemos esa actitud, no, hay que ayudar a esos pobrecitos, ellos no saben nada, no pueden hacer nada, ellos dependen todo en otra persona. No, este proceso de dar escucha es un proceso humanizador, ¿no? ¿Cómo se dice? It's humanizing process.
Humanizador.
Humanizador, gracias, right?
Humanizante.
Ajá. Porque ya estamos con mucha anticipación, escuchando con mucha discreción. Y we can say, esto es lo que hemos escuchado. ¿Qué has escuchado? It's not, does your child have a problem with mental illness? Right? You're not going to ask somebody that. But you may hear, and we are hearing from many directors of catechism and catechists, the children and the parents who confide in them. And so then we say, well, how could, we've heard that there maybe are some people here in our parish who've been going through a lot through this pandemic. And we heard a couple of stories about children who are really thinking about suicide. And then we kind of say, I don't know, is this true? What have you heard? Right? It's not, have you thought about suicide? No. Has your child thought about suicide? No. It's the indirecta, en forma indirecta, ¿no? Eso es lo que hemos escuchado, que has escuchado. So there's many different techniques, and if we have with follow-up that we can do together, we do a lot of practice in role plays, right? about how to have these conversations in a way that really uncovers talent and possibility. Preguntas, comentarios, ¿cómo les parecen?
Yo creo que pasamos al siguiente, Rebeca, por la acción del tiempo.
Okay. So, si ya escuchamos bien, ya mucho más fácil, ¿no? Hacer el segundo paso, identificar los temas comunes. So if we're really listening, step 2 is a breeze. Because you bring back, you have your team, you're bringing back all these notes, right? And reports and from different ministry groups of what's going on, and you start to put it all together. And at some point you have a parish assembly and say, guess what, everybody? This is what we're hearing. And we've done this. I could think of another parish where we had lots of people participate, and we got anybody who, the leader, anybody who was willing to come and say, would you like to find out what other groups are saying? And would you like now to investigate the sources of these sufferings? And we did the Rio Arriba, right? The upstream kind of exercise we just looked at briefly tonight. We've done as parish assemblies, and it's amazing, right? When you have all the tables all around and people are analyzing what's going on and really talking to each other and saying, I bet you didn't know this was really going on next door. And I bet you didn't know this happened or that happened, right? And you begin to put together a very smart analysis of what's going on. And if you've got this process going on in more than one parish and more than one group in the neighborhood, you find out even more. But you then move to look at, okay, if this is what's going on, what would God have to say about this? So let's go back and contemplate God's dream, which is what you did in your first 2 sessions of this course, right? You spent a lot of time reflecting on God's dream for humanity. The kingdom of God is God's dream. So part of our discernment is looking at our current reality and saying, what's going to change for our current reality to become more the way God intended it? Entonces, por contemplar el sueño de Dios de nuevo, siempre estamos contemplando el sueño de Dios. En cada misa, ¿no? En cada oración, en cada lectura bíblica. Pero ya en este proceso podemos contemplar el sueño de Dios y hacer un análisis, a comparar el sueño de Dios con nuestra realidad. ¿Qué es lo que nos falta? Y cómo podríamos ¿cómo se dice? Hacer de nuevo, restaurar, ¿no? Nuestra realidad como si fuera más como lo que Dios había diseñado. Okay. Then from there, we can begin to visualize the solutions. So tonight, you see how fast when we did that analysis earlier, everybody's going, we know, we'll go here, we'll go there. And it's great to have ideas, right? But if you go through these first 4 steps, you're going to be in a much better position to think about solutions that respond to the current reality. So, for example, someone here said, see that, wow, we ought to have more assistance for rent. Somebody mentioned that, right? Was it Wendy? And what's interesting, right, is that when we do the analysis, we start to figure out, my goodness, there is a lot of assistance for rent. There's $50 million in San Bernardino County. Yes, and what? We didn't know that. And then there's another $50 million that's coming down the road. What? We didn't know that either. What's going on here, right? And then we can start to figure out, how could the people in need be able to access what's available? And sometimes, and we have encountered problems with the system, okay? Big problems, actually. Entonces, es por decir que este análisis es muy importante en ayudar a nosotros visualizar soluciones prácticas Y este ejemplo de renta, ¿no? Uno puede decir, oh, no hay dinero para ayudar a gente con la renta. Well, por nuestro análisis ya nos damos cuenta que sí hay $50 millones y otros $50 millones que ya vengan del gobierno federal para el condado de San Bernardino y para los residentes del condado de San Bernardino. Well, si es cierto, ¿por qué no sabemos? Y si sabemos, ¿por qué la gente no puede accesar, ¿no? Solicitar estos fondos? Y por eso es otra forma de análisis. Well, ¿qué está pasando con este proceso? Oh. Y ahora nos damos cuenta que hay que esperar, hasta 45 días y hay que llamar a 211 y cuando uno habla 211 hay que esperar 1 hora o más y uno sabe y hay varias, ¿no? Hay varias barreras. Pero con paciencia podemos analizar las barreras y esto puede ser cuando llegamos al próximo paso, ¿no? De actuar, no es simplemente actuar, pero es actuar en consecuencia, ¿no? So we're acting not just for the action's sake, but we're acting because of what we've learned by seeing and judging. And when we do that, we have a much better chance of the action actually alleviating suffering than if we just guess or we just hope for the best, right? And not only that, but we now have a lot more people involved. So remember, talent refers to who, then what? Nos recordamos, primero quién y luego qué. Si pasamos por este proceso, es un proceso de formar relaciones, ¿no? Y es como búsqueda, ¿no? de pescador de hombres. Es búsqueda de talento. So it's like the fishers of men, right? It's lower your net and let's see what we can find for talent when we begin to have these conversations, not only to find out what's going on, but to analyze and to reflect and to contemplate together. Because then you can really discern practical next steps. Es por este proceso, ¿no? Disciplinada, uno puede definir los siguientes pasos prácticos. Y este número 7, number 7, also becomes the way to engage more talent because you're saying, you participated in our meetings, you came and did the Rio Arriba exercise, you helped to do research actions to find out what's going on, you helped to imagine what might be a good ideas. So let's have you be a part of agreeing that this is what we will do next. So es diferente, ¿no? En lugar de tener un grupo de acción social diciendo, hay que pensar en una acción, hay que tratar de movilizar gente. ¿Y por qué la gente no responde? Y todavía, ¿verdad? Pero si ya hay cosecha grande desde el principio, if you're already thinking how to get lots of people into a listening campaign and how to get lots of people into a parish assembly that's analyzing what happened and then figuring out what to do next, then you'll have a lot of people ready to decide together. You call it to ratify together. Llegar a un consenso en común. De, estas son las prioritarias, las prioridades, y ya luego, esto es lo que vamos a hacer a continuación, algo específico, alcanzable, inmediato. So we ended up, I'll give an example from this parish in Fontana where we had been talking, this is before pandemia, with all the different parents. We came up with lots of things I don't have time to go into tonight, but one concrete step many of the couples decided would be very helpful is to have a marriage enrichment session. They didn't have it there. So they organized the diocese to come and they had 50 parejas that immediately signed up, right? They agreed to have their 4 weeks or their 6 weeks or whatever it was, right? And that was a specific, winnable, immediate action. So it's por decir, ¿no? Cuando pensamos en una comunidad de sal y luz, that it's not just the social issues, remember the systems? It could also be the religious system. It could be, and we've actually had that happen, where I remember another parish where we were doing all this listening, and they said, you know what? There's a lot of people who come for funerals, and then we don't see them again. So un ejemplo, ¿no? Cuando uno ya da esta clase de escucha y pasa por este proceso de análisis, puede también dar resulta en que hay acción en un ministerio. Y en esta parroquia, otra parroquia, ellos formaban un ministerio para el duelo. They did a grieving ministry because they realized we were doing a great job with funerals, but then 3 months later, and those of us that have lost close people know, right? 3 months later, we're still really, and who is with us? So they figured it out. They took a concrete action. And always in action, we come up with we prepare ourselves, we take the action, and then we evaluate how it's gone. So you'll actually have a chance to do this for this course. Jose Luis mentioned that today, right? Que ustedes mismos van a tener la oportunidad de evaluar este curso, ¿no? Después de esas 3 sesiones. So, esto es más o menos, muy rápido, un vislumbre, ¿no? De este proceso de ver, juzgar, actuar, pero facilitado, y esto es lo más importante, este equipo organizador son los que felicitan, facilitan este proceso. ¿Preguntas, comentarios?
Any questions in this important method of See, Judge, Act? ¿Alguna clarificación del método ver, juzgar, actuar? For me, Rebecca, it is interesting how in this section of act, in Spanish, emphasize actuar en consecuencia. Doesn't mean that is when we act after the previous 2 steps of see and judge, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
It's not independent.
That's right. Yep. And we get talent. That's what's so this is really where I want to keep an eye on. I know Sister Hortensia is coming. Is she here?
Sister Hortensia, are you here?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, she's here. Sorry.
Okay. So we want to take a pause, Sister Hortensia, for you to comment to the group and introduce yourself.
Yes.
Do I need to stop sharing so you can do that?
¿Quiere que abramos las caras?
Pues sí, para vernos, ¿verdad?
Yes, Rebecca, please stop sharing.
Okay.
So everybody, please pay attention a little bit more. I know you were paying attention and you was in a very active participation. No tengo duda, pero now we have with us the director of the Office of Community Services and Outreach in the Diocese of San Bernardino. She's going to give us an important point here. Is a message that is connected to what Rebecca and I are presenting tonight. Pongamos mucha atención a Sister Hortensia, la directora de la Oficina de Servicios Comunitarios, y es importante que en este punto de la presentación escuchemos lo que ella nos quiere proponer. Bienvenida, Sister. Welcome.
Gracias. Thank you, Jose Luis. I don't know if there's a way of seeing all the faces, but I have received some hello on the chat. Thank you very much. We have share the journey with some of you in this course, and it is wonderful. So as Jose Luis said, my name is Sister Hortensia del Villar. I am of service to all of you in the Diocese of San Bernardino through our ministry, Community Services and Outreach, previously known as Social Concerns. I'm very happy. I saw there's 45 participants. That means there's a thirst to live the gospel in a deep way and to build communities of salt and light in our diocese. I am very happy.
We have 75 people, sister.
75. Oh, wonderful.
Because
wonderful.
some are in couples.
Oh, wonderful. Excellent.
Partners,
Okay.
yeah.
Decía en español que soy la hermana Hortensia dando mi servicio en la diócesis en el área de le llamamos alcance y servicios. Creo que en español es más conocido por el servicio de la misión social de la iglesia. And I have been working closely with Jose Luis, and our hope is that we are able to connect what you learn with your service and your opening of your gifts to organize actions, as Rebecca was sharing, a commitment, a journey that is in solidarity with our brothers and sisters, that where you have an opportunity to implement and to actually be able to put into life what you have learned in terms of being communities of salt and light. We are a community that listens to the cries of our people, that see the suffering of our communities, especially during this time of COVID. And so I think through this course, you have been able to learn how to implement the gospel through the CJUDGE Act. And my office works with different groups that have the special gift of organizing in order to offer practical ways of implementing the gospel in the parish community, but also in the larger community, in order to respond, to empower our communities to respond to the situations of difficulty at different levels, of hunger, of immigrant rights, family situations, problems, educational injustices, different areas in our community where our communities are very much affected. Decía que con este curso que han tomado han aprendido cuál es nuestra llamada como discípulos a poner el evangelio en acción, y mi oficina trabaja con diferentes grupos en la comunidad como Inland Communities Organizing Network y luego ICUC, Inland Congregations United for Change, y otros que nos ayudan a organizarnos para escuchar, evaluar la situación en la comunidad y organizarnos para responder en búsqueda de la justicia y la paz y la dignidad para todos. So I am working with and in solidarity with different organizing groups like ICON, Inland Communities Organizing Network, and Inland Congregations United for Change. And these are two groups, and there's others that are supported by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. We have different resources that allow us to continue this ongoing collaboration. But for me, one of the main invitations maybe for tonight is how are we feeling God's call in terms of continuing our journey together with the different organizations in our diocese in order to apply what you have learned. I think oftentimes it can be the case that we become passionate about a course and what we learn in terms of the call of the gospel to implement Catholic social teaching. But then at times, maybe we don't have the structure or the support in our parish, and then it becomes difficult to continue the journey. So I am here to follow up on what you have learned with Jose Luis and to continue to organize our communities in a way that we can continue to journey together to be those communities of salt and light. Estaba diciendo que a veces podemos tomar los cursos y nos entusiasmamos mientras estamos tomando las clases y escuchamos a nuestros instructores. Pero después, si no hay un seguimiento o no seguimos involucrados, nos enfriamos o a veces no hay una estructura en la parroquia que nos ayude y no seguimos adelante. Entonces, lo que quiero decir es que después de esta clase yo estoy aquí también para apoyarlos en esa implementación en sus parroquias. Y cuando digo yo estoy aquí, quiero decir estoy aquí junto con otras 2 o 3 organizaciones que hacemos seguimiento para seguir formando estos equipos a nivel de la parroquia y de la comunidad para responder a los gritos de nuestros hermanos y hermanas y los sufrimientos, ¿verdad? Y ser de alguna manera juntos, organizarnos para hacer esas comunidades de sal y luz que tanto se necesitan en este tiempo. So I will leave a few minutes in case you have some questions or some reactions. Voy a dejar unos minutos por si tienen unas preguntas a lo que he compartido.
Thank you, Sister Hortensia. Please unmute your mic if you have a question. You don't need to raise your hand, just go straight with your question or your comment. Si tiene una pregunta o comentario, apriete su microfonito y entre rápido con su pregunta o su comentario.
Sister, could you leave your information in the chat? Contact.
Yes, and I know, Jose Luis, we will probably send out more information via email. Is this correct?
Yes.
About my office and the groups that we work with, so that you can also be informed and get connected. Thank you.
Thank you, sister, and thank you, Dan. So you will receive the information to contact Sister Hortensia and her office. Le enviaremos la información. Marilyn, your comment or question?
Sure. Hi, Sister.
Hi, Marlene.
Yeah, nice to see you. I'm responding to your comment that sometimes within the parish, we don't really have the structures or the support to operate. And I'm just wondering if sometime within the last year or two, you've noticed a structure that, or an organization that exceeds the parish or doesn't reside completely within the parish that caught your imagination and you thought, oh, that's a good way for people who are trying to resolve some problem to try. What have you seen creative in organizations?
Yes. Well, I think I'm sure Rebecca has shared about Inland Communities Organizing Network.
Actually, no, there hasn't been time. We've been talking about Salt and Light.
Wow, okay, yes. Well, I'm going to invite Rebecca to share a little bit about Inland Communities Organizing Network and how you organize with different congregations, not only Catholic communities. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Right, and I think I mentioned I felt it was sort of my personal social mission, to be working in a way that makes it possible for parishes like yours, Marilyn, and others here to figure out how to develop those structures, how to work together, and how to have a chance at influencing the sinful social structures that are all around, because we have enough power to actually act together. And that we do so not just because we want to go out and just protest, because we don't normally, our style is not to do that at all, really. It's to negotiate. It's to say, how, once we identify the suffering, do we, and figure out, go through our ver juzgar actuar process, right? Do we actually negotiate some real changes? And was it Hector, I think earlier, was talking about the example of gosh, one of the reasons why we can't afford our rent is because we don't save our money. And I'll just use an example. I was working with an organization many years ago where they had a whole listening campaign around debts to assets and began a whole conversation around money and resulted in going to a big local bank and saying, if we agree to learn how to save our money, will you give us a free savings account and a free checking account? And they said, we'll do better than that. We'll use some of our community reinvestment dollars to give you the first $500 for your savings account. And by the way, if you have young people that are trying to get loans to go to college, we'll figure out something with them too, right? And then, so you begin those relationships, first of all, among ourselves, trying to take charge of our own assets, but then saying to the big financial institutions, would you partner with us? And by partner, we mean, will you be just? We talked about the economic system of having the steward, right, of shared wealth. Will you do this with us?
That's a wonderful example.
Yes, and I thank you for the question, Marilyn, because this is a question that we get often from our communities. And I know here in San Bernardino, there's also another organizing group. It's called Inland Congregations United for Change. And so many of our, 4 of our priests in San Bernardino and about 20 or 30 of different parishioners from 4 or 5 different parishes here in San Bernardino are involved with Inland Congregations United for Change, and they have brought about change in terms of education reform for youth and criminal justice, also immigrant rights. The community also worked for the voting rights, and so they were able to focus on different issues affecting our community. And some of our parishioners and leaders who actually graduated from Charity and Justice, who belong to some parish where the structure or the priest or the community was not so supportive of this kind of CJUSH Act, listening and justice-oriented organizing, actually joined this group and at the vicariate level. So that is possible. And I can offer more information. The group also, as Rebecca mentioned, it's a whole process where you become, you find allies and discern together, Catholic, Muslim, Jewish, the school community, the parish community, the synagogue community, to discern together, listen together, and find common ground for action long term. So what I want to say at times, what I have heard from some of our leaders is, sister, we cannot get involved, or we were not able to continue our journey and our commitment because the parish priest is not supporting us. And it is a valid response, but we are called by our we have a baptismal call to continue to be disciples to our brothers and sisters and to live the gospel, and to find, how do we find creative ways to come together as a community with the different groups that are already existing. So, and it may be that in Holy Name of Jesus, we organized organizing group with other leaders in the area and other parishes, and that is possible. Thank you, Martin, for asking. You're actually already anyway, I'll talk to you later, but you're doing a lot of what we call organizing process in what you already do. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. Thank you, Marilyn, for your question. ¿Tienen alguna una última pregunta o comentario?
I would just say,
Sure.
Hermana Hortensia, is there like any kind of salt and light justice for everyone else, like to be invited, like at the parish level, for it to be invited, or like this reviewing of topic, and to understand that for it to have open doors for parishes and communities? Like, is this something trying to be implemented amongst the diocese for them to be more receptive? Because just like with Maryland, I do see that and foresee that. And would your recommendation be to invite the community, like a listening kind of campaign, to be able to start the conversation, or what would your recommendation be?
Hi, Wendy. How are you? You are in what parish?
Sacred Heart in Jurupa Valley.
Oh, okay. So my recommendation would be to begin a conversation and journey with the Inland Congregations United for Change. They have ongoing trainings on how to begin listening sessions and how to go through the process of coming together as a community, as a group, and train in order to begin and continue that process. So I think Jose Luis already put my information in the chat, so you can contact me and we can talk. Thank you.
Wendy, ¿podrías decir brevemente tu pregunta en español?
Nomás pregunté cómo son o qué es la recomendación para empezar este tipo de escuchar, observar en esta enseñanza en nuestra comunidad, y cómo se puede empezar a hacer este tipo de conversaciones primero empezando en su comunidad.
Muy bien. Y ahí está la respuesta de Sister, ¿verdad? La importancia de hacer un pequeño proceso y de recibir un poco de orientación por parte de su oficina y las organizaciones que nos apoyan. Rebecca, do you want to wrap up or?
Well, quizás nomás Sister Hortensia, si quiere explicar un poquito que con estas organizaciones hay diferentes vicariatos en que trabajamos.
Sí, cómo no. Sí, gracias, Rebecca. I'll say it in Spanish and then in English. Rebecca, en nuestra diócesis trabaja con la campaña católica de desarrollo humano, Catholic Campaign for Human Development. Y esta campaña es una campaña aprobada por los obispos de Estados Unidos, y nosotros nos contactamos y hacemos trabajo en conjunto con 2 grupos en nuestra diócesis para implementar la misión social de la iglesia. Uno de esos grupos es, como ya dije antes, Inland Congregations United for Change, y este grupo trabaja en los vicariatos de Bajo Desierto, Alto Desierto, San Bernardino y Riverside. Hemet está un poco, todavía no hay mucho trabajo ahí. Y hace más de 4 años, gracias a Dios, estamos con el grupo de Rebecca, Inland Communities Organizing Network, y con ella estamos trabajando con todas las parroquias del West End, del vicariato de West End, y estamos viendo la posibilidad de extendernos también a Hemet. Entonces, dependiendo en qué vicariato esté usted, nos vamos a contactar o con ICANN o con ICUC. So I was just sharing that as a Diocese of San Bernardino, we have the privilege of being able to work closely with Catholic Campaign for Human Development, and this is a campaign, of course, supported by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, and the purpose of the campaign is to help the parishes and to assist and support and journey with dioceses and parishes to implement the social mission of the Church. And in order to do that, Catholic Campaign supports organizing groups like ICANN and ICUC. So in the Diocese of San Bernardino, Inland Congregations United for Change that partners with Catholic Campaign for Human Development to implement the social mission of the Church. We work with ICUC in the vicariates of San Bernardino, Low Desert, High Desert, and Riverside, and we work with ICANN, Rebecca Gifford, with the parishes in the West End, the parishes and the community in the West End. So if you are interested to continue and to implement the social mission of the church and to learn, to continue to grow, no, and learning the process and going through the process, because we learn the process by going through the process. This is only the beginning of this kind of learning. You can email me and we will organize a follow-up session with either ICON or ICUC. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Rebecca.
Hortensia.
Sí, dígame. Hola, Columba.
Hi, hola, nada más quiero decirle que pues thank you very much for your information. Y de la question de how do you feel the gospel, I'm feeling like I have to live the gospel more deeper. And it's my mission, I think, for everyone. Thank you and God bless you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Gracias, Columba. Thank you, Sister Hortensia. And of course, that's in terms of organizing, but we also work with other organizations, right? That support the social mission of the diocese, the parish. So there's plenty of opportunities, ¿no? To receive some help and orientation. Trabajamos con muchas otras organizaciones también que apoyan la misión social de la iglesia y creo que hay ayuda para todos, ¿no?
Sí, nuestra oficina, nuestro ministerio también trabaja en lo que es la parte de, podemos decir la parte de caridad, de ayuda directa a nuestros hermanos y hermanas. Ajá. Trabajamos directamente también en colaboración con Caridades Católicas y a nivel de solidaridad con Catholic Relief Services. So our office also works in terms of partnering with Catholic charities for direct services, which is a very deep need in our diocese, and also in terms of solidarity with our brothers and sisters around the world with Catholic Relief Services. So we have different partners to implement social mission of the church and different opportunities at different levels.
Thank you so much, Sister. Muchas gracias. I think it's time to move on with the presentation. Rebecca, do you want to?
Yeah. Okay. And I think with the time, let me maybe just briefly give you a taste. If you are continuing to really try and develop yourselves and others in your parish as Salt and Light leaders, it can be very helpful to be thinking about the habits. How is it that we continue to develop our habits as Salt and Light leaders? Entonces, si ustedes ya tienen las ganas, ¿no?, de seguir desarrollando este clase de comunidad de sal y luz en su propia parroquia, buscando otras personas, otro talento para trabajar con ustedes, ya es muy bueno pensar en la cuestión de cuáles son los hábitos de los líderes de sal y luz, porque ya como habíamos dicho, este proceso de misión social no es simplemente proceso de cambio social, es cambio personal. Nosotros como los agentes de misión social siempre estamos en camino, ¿no? De cambio interior, exterior, pero en particular interior. Y una manera nada más pensar, ¿no?, en los hábitos y la clase de cambio, ¿no?, que esto nos ofrecen, es por los hábitos de buenaventuranzas, ¿verdad? Y porque los líderes de comunidades de sal y luz, que son todos los bautizados, son los aventurados por llorar. Bienaventurados por ser manso, bienaventurados por ser misericordiosos, por tener hambre y sed de justicia, por trabajar como pacificadores. So we've said Salt and Light leaders are all the baptized, and all the baptized, right, are a part of that kingdom vision to say, whoa, you know, any of us who cry, really cry with people, right, who allow our hearts to be torn, you know, by the suffering that we see. Those of us that are, we don't have time tonight to go through. There's a whole wonderful kind of reflection we can do on these Beatitudes, right? On how we, if we're developing our meekness, which is not timidity, right? It's being humble. It's realizing that we have to be prudent in how we use our anger, if it's righteous anger or if it's hot anger, you know, and we have to be forgiving, right? And we have to, you know, always be looking at what in ourself needs to change in order to be more of the salt and light that God has created us to be together with others. So that's kind of an overview of really the kind of inner formation that we can continue to pursue together. It certainly is the inner formation that Dorothy Day and Martin Luther King and Oscar Romero, you know, have written about in themselves, and that it's something, and they've now become examples and saints, right? That we can even learn from. So just to put that perspective out there, es nada más una perspectiva, no tenemos tiempo en este momento para pensar, no, profundizar estos temas de los hábitos de bienaventuranzas. Pero el otro tema, y por eso reflexión, ¿no? ¿Qué hábito, ¿no? Con qué hábito te identificas más, qué hábito quieres desarrollar? Todo eso es un proceso interior. Y vamos a dividir en grupos pequeños para reflexionar sobre estas preguntas, pero por supuesto no hay tiempo, ¿no? But it gives you an idea of the kind of ongoing discernment and an interior growth that becomes possible. But let me just go on now to the next, and very quickly, because I think it's important, having read this document of Salt and Light, which I presume you all have, right? Entonces, ustedes ya han leído este documento de Comunidades de Sal y Luz, y ya sabemos que en este documento ya los obispos indican que hay 7 elementos importantes. Now, when you look at these as just a list, it's like, oh my gosh, okay, yeah, we got to pray. Oh, then we got to go find a good sermon. Oh, and then we ought to do something with families. Oh, and by the way, we got our charity thing. We'll go out and do that too. Oh, and then does somebody have is there legislative action? Oh, California Catholic Conference has got an action alert. Okay, we'll do that too, right? And oh, well, you know, Rebecca and you know, Icon and ICUs, we'll organize in the, oh, right, we'll do that. And then, oh, yeah, we'll do something else with Rice Bowl or some other group, you know, so we kind of look at it as a laundry list, right? It's como a grocery list. And this is really only a list of ingredients. Some of you have been in a class, we've talked about this before. You can have a platillo muy rico, right? The hecho de muchos ingredientes. But if you only just have the ingredientes, you don't ever have the platillo, right? Unless you know how to do, we talked about mole. For those of the who know mole, we were talking about how difficult it is to make good mole, right? So I'm just going to leave you with this crazy looking image, which you're going to get a copy of in your email. Okay. Esta es una imagen nada más para mostrar que sí hay muchas oportunidades para vivir la misión social si uno piensa en lista. Ok. ¿Quiénes son las organizaciones con quien yo puedo trabajar para tomar acción legislativa? ¿Quiénes son los con quien puedo trabajar para dar ayuda directa a madres solteras or whatever, right? So it's easy to kind of think of these as separate, but what the communities of salt and light vision that the bishops have put together actually does is say, you want to be a community of salt and light, you need to focus on developing the infrastructure, the salt and light infrastructure. And their elements, right, are really all a part of that infrastructure. Es como una infraestructura de comunidad de sal y luz. Y para tener sal y luz, comunidad de sal y luz, en el centro hay que tener oración y culto, no? You know, you got to anchor what we're doing always but it's all about creating community, building relationships. We know from this pandemic, right, that there are so many people in our parishes we can't even find. We don't know where they went. Right? And we know in some cases people are suffering in silence. Well, let's find them, right? Let's do the outreach. Let's come up with really creative campaigns for really reaching out and seeing and trying to listen to what's going on. But then we go through the analysis, right? To elegir bien, that we're looking at, and we know preaching and education is a part of that, which is one of their elements, right? But also social analysis, like what we did a little bit of tonight, all the biblical values that you talked a lot about with Deacon John and also with Tom, and that hay que actuar en consecuencia. So if we're going to act, we have to continue building solidarity, both within ourselves, but with all these neighboring groups. Otherwise, we're not going to have the capacity to address some of the suffering. And we know that if we do that, another element that the bishops list in their document is we'll be supporting family, work, and citizenship. And so just to show that if you put the team together, when you say quiénes son los responsables, si ya tiene un equipo organizador y ya piensan en esta visión, ¿no? de una comunidad de sal y luz y los elementos ya esenciales, que ya nombrados por los obispos, ¿no? Elementos de oración y culto, elemento de alcance, elemento de justicia, prédica y educación, etcétera, etcétera. Pero no es como una lista de ingredientes, es parte de una infraestructura de esperanza, ¿no? De esperanza por ser una comunidad viva, un cuerpo vivo, que ya asegurando su misión en oración y culto, pero también con las disciplinas, hábitos de bienaventuranzas, ¿no? De entrar en estas campañas de escucha, de análisis, de acción, de evaluación, de más escucha, más análisis, siempre y cada vez que pasamos por este círculo, ya buscamos más gente con deseo, más bautizados, listo para tomar la rienda. So that's the infrastructure as we keep activating more and more of the baptized every time we kind of go around this cycle. If we're consciente, if we really are saying, oh, yes, right, let's pay attention. We actually can use this to build a tremendous community of hope. So Jose Luis, I think that's all the time we have for my comment. And I realized that was a big blast at the end, but I wanted to make sure that we at least saw the possibilities. And, of course, and hope that it inspires you to continue this conversation, to look forward to your email tomorrow where you'll get all this stuff attached and you can chew on it a bit more.
Yes, I think even when it is a lot, we can see the pieces, and I think once we have the handouts, we were able to spend some time reviewing them and trying to make the whole sense of the program, and how at the end this beautiful invitation to respond to the Lord's call and to the church needs, in order to make parishes communities of salt and light. With these ingredients, we can cook a good mole. Con estos ingredientes podemos cocinar un excelente mole, un excelente platillo, y podemos lograr esa meta de hacer nuestras parroquias comunidades de sal y luz. We are now going to make a brief reflective exercise. We don't have time for small groups, right, Rebecca?
No.
No.
We don't.
But we will have time for final comments. Let me share my screen. once more. This is the closing exercise. We are going to reflect on this beautiful art image of John August Swanson. It's called The Storm. Vamos a reflexionar esta imagen de arte muy bonita que hizo el artista John August Swanson. We were planning this with Rebecca, but we didn't know that this will happen. John August Swanson died today, very early today, like almost yesterday. It was right after midnight. He passed away, and humble artist committed to justice, peace, beauty, and transformation with his beautiful art pieces. And we pray for his eternal rest, while we will continue to use his artwork to learn about justice, peace, and many other gospel values. And this is his artwork that we are going to reflect on. Él murió esta madrugada, inesperadamente, le falló su corazón, pero nosotros continuamos haciendo su memoria en el arte que él hizo, que es un arte que nos lleva a la justicia, a la paz y a muchos valores evangélicos. Entonces, mientras usted mira el arte, piense en sus parroquias. Sus parroquias ya son comunidades de sal y luz. Reflect while you see the art, think on these questions. Are your communities, your parishes already communities of salt and light? Can you see the urgency of this mission? Puedes mirar la urgencia de esta misión. And this is the art piece. It's called The Storm, la tormenta. Vamos a compartir. Something happened on my side, like the screen is where the PowerPoint is became frozen. Rebecca, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Do you still want the storm up? I have it. I could bring up for you if you'd like.
Sure. Hemos visto la imagen de
Hang on just a sec. I got it here too.
de
Okay.
John August Swanson y queremos escuchar ahora su reflexión al mirar la imagen. ¿Qué reflexión viene acerca de la iglesia, acerca de la parroquia, acerca del curso, acerca de usted y de su llamado? While you while you observe the beautiful artwork, the storm, what were your thoughts and how do you relay these thoughts to your parish, the church, the social mission, your vocation, your call? Let's have this a couple of minutes of sharing your thoughts. Open your mic and share your thought. Abre su micrófono y comparta algo.
This is Keith. What I see when I'm looking at this art is just a church all together as one community. You know, the young, the old, just everyone in the same boat. Everyone's all doing the same thing, wanting to help each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Who's next? Go ahead. Don't raise your hand. Just go ahead and say your thought. Alicia, we have
what I
with your audio.
is to my office.
Yeah. Alicia, we have,
I'll type it in.
Thank you, Alicia. Héctor.
A mí me llama mucho la atención que el hombre es el que guía, siempre protegiendo a las mujeres y a los niños.
Muy bien, gracias, Héctor. Who's next?
I'll go. I'm really enjoying the colors. It's so vibrant. And even if it looks like it's a storm, twirling, 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 they're moving in a good direction as it is. So I love the vibrancy of the colors.
Thank you, Ursula.
José Luis, yo lo que veo es que todos estamos en el mismo barco. Ahorita yo puedo estar bien y mañana quién sabe. Por eso tengo que preocuparme por los más débiles, por los más vulnerables. Porque un día yo me puedo subir a ese barco también.
Gracias, Claudio. Who's next?
Mi punto de vista yo lo veo como que sí se puede cuando estamos unidos, cuando todos queremos cooperar, cuando todos queremos estar, cuando podemos ver los sentimientos de los demás, cuando podemos tocarnos el corazón por los demás.
Gracias, Rosy. Who's next?
Yeah, this is
go ahead.
Doug. I'm
ahead,
looking at it, I'm seeing, you know, the boat is moving forward, and there's some of the people are looking forward, but others are looking at me. And it's almost like they're under struggle and they're looking for help.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you, Doug. I have the comment from, several came at the same time. In the chat, Alicia, this reminds of our office during COVID. We pulled together to help each other. We are a family, and the more we assist each other and the community, the more the community will want to help our community. Hope that makes sense. We pull together to make it happen. Sure, it makes sense, Alicia. Thank you so much for your comment. Who's next?
A mí lo que me llama la atención es que como esta persona que hizo la obra se fue hoy, pero también miro al bebé que está allí, que está en una vida comenzando. Entonces,
Hay esperanza.
yo me pregunto en dónde estoy ahorita en estos momentos en la iglesia.
Muy bien, muy buena pregunta, Rosa María. Muchas gracias. Last comment.
Can I
Go ahead,
say
Sylvia.
something? It's Sylvia. Okay. I see a lot of action and that they have a plan and they're going to their destination. And then it's up to us to help them. after they get to their destination.
Great. Thank you, Silvia. Rebeca, bueno, tenemos un comentario en el chat. Para mí representa un grupo de inmigrantes en busca de un mejor futuro, un futuro que no sabemos si está cerca o no. Rebecca, do you want to wrap up? And then I close with some announcements.
I think I'm finished.
You finished? Okay, anything you want to say? No?
It's been very inspiring for me to be a part of these conversations over the last 3 weeks, and I look forward to what God may have in mind for us moving forward.
Sure. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias por esta oportunidad, por estas 3 sesiones. Entonces, ha sido una gran inspiración para mí estar con ustedes y ya con mucha anticipación a ver lo que Dios quiere de nosotros, ¿no? En el futuro.
Sí, gracias, Rebecca. I think we all can say that, closing with this, our piece, we see that Jesus is not about, Salt and Light, it's not about Rebecca, it's not about Tom, it's not about Deacon John, it's not about Jose Luis, or about the diocese, but it's about Jesus and his project for us. And we are all together in the church as a baptized, trying to accept the invitation to make the kingdom of God a reality in our parish communities. No es algo que le toca a José Luis o a Tom o a Rebeca o a Deacon John o a la diócesis, sino que, como hemos visto, le toca a todos los bautizados, y juntos vamos a hacer que nuestras parroquias sean comunidades de sal y luz. Bueno, pues con esto hemos terminado. Dice el Papa Francisco que Jesús va con nosotros, que vamos juntos, y nos habla de que la Iglesia tiene una misión, que a pesar a veces de las tormentas que encuentra, cuando todos vamos haciendo el esfuerzo por remar, la barca continúa adelante. Pope Francis invites us to continue helping the church move forward, reaching out the social mission. Muy bien. We get to the end of this brief course. Tomorrow we will send you all the handouts of this session, but in addition to that, you will receive 2 more. One is going to be the evaluation for the program, and the second one is the most important of the whole course, the final paper. It's very simple. It's just 3 simple questions that you will learn a lot with those 3 questions. I don't say anything, you will receive it at your email. Esperen en su email todos los materiales de hoy, y además 2 que son muy importantes: la evaluación y el trabajo final que todos deben de escribir. Keep in mind that in order for you to get the certificate for Salt and Light, you need to complete your final paper. And you will see that it's very, very simple. And I am in the office, we are in the office to help you. Even the instructors offer me their support. If you are struggling with the assignment, just call me and we help you to move on. Van a ver que es muy sencillo y nosotros estamos para ayudarles, y esperamos que pronto lo hagan y reciban su certificado. Thank you so much for attending the Salt and Light program. Those of you who are deacon aspirants, please refer to your director, Deacon Luis Sanchez, to talk about the next step on the social mission. When are you going to take a Charity and Justice? In 1, 2, 3 years, or when? And for the rest of you, you are welcome to join us next Sunday, September 26th, in the Charity and Justice Program. We will meet once a month, one Sunday a month from 9, actually 8:30, 9 in the morning to 2 p.m. to 2:30. Sometimes early, sometimes around 2:30. Only October we have 2 sessions, but the rest is 1 Sunday per month. And the last one will be a retreat in the month of June, followed by Eucharistic celebration with Bishop Rojas. So I hope to see you next Sunday for the Charity and Justice Program. And because it's advanced level, we will have different topics that we are to go in deep, what we found in Salt and Light. It's like we are going to snorkeling, vamos a bucear en la belleza de estos términos de sal y luz. Again, thank you so much for attending. I wish the presence of the Holy Spirit with you, so you're not afraid to work hard. May you and your community a sign of the reign of God, light for the world, salt for the earth. Muchas gracias por haber venido, por haber estado en el curso, y les deseo que el Espíritu Santo los acompañe para que no tengan miedo en ser ustedes y las parroquias sal de la tierra y luz del mundo. Thank you so much and see you soon.
Thank you so
God bless you all.